Well, it's that time of the week again, and it's time for Wirecast Live. And today we have a great show for you in store. We're going to be talking about how to do awesome live demos with one of the masters of live software demos, Terry White from Adobe. Plus, just for you guys, we have a special offer here on the show, so you're going to want to stay tuned. This should be a fun show. Welcome to Wirecast Live. I'll see you right after the opening credits. Welcome back to Wirecast Live, and I'm so glad you're joining us. Today it is Thursday, and it is 2:30 p.m. That is the time that we go live every week on our Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope pages. So you're in the right place. This is where we talk about all things related to live video and live streaming. We bring on experts in their fields to teach us some things we may not know, either about the marketing or the business side or the teaching side, or how to present yourself on camera, or all the things that may be related to live video or live video production and broadcasting. So it tends to be an interesting show. We try to pack it with all kinds of cool tips and great experts that can come on and teach us things that we don't know how to do ourselves. And we have one of the best in the business joining us later today, and I will bring him on in just a moment. But for those of you who want or just can't get enough of your live broadcasting fix from all the other sources you get it from, you should mark your calendars or go to our email subscription list, which is at telestream.net/wirecastlive. We will just send you an email to your inbox with upcoming live guests, live topics, and we won't spam you, I promise. That's a great way to get notified when we're live. Another way to find us is following us on our social channels. So that's a great place to just subscribe or get notified. YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope will all notify you the minute we go live on those platforms. So that's another great place to find us. Now, for those of you that need a little more assistance or just want to be join part of a community, maybe join the dialogue, our Wirecast users group is a fantastic way to get started with that. You can join the community. We have a growing group of Wirecast users. You can ask questions. You can share your posts or your live streams, your successes, your failures, your in-betweens. All of that stuff can be found at the Wirecast users group on Facebook. So I encourage you to join that if you're looking for a place to join the community of other live streamers and live producers of video. Okay, with that aside, we have a few announcements and news just to cover, and then we'll dive into our topic for today. So, as I mentioned, we do have a special offer just for you guys to say thank you. So Terry and I will be talking about that in a little bit, about that offer and where you can go to get that. But we thought, as a way of saying thank you to our live guests and our live viewers, we are offering occasionally live deals on Wirecast. So stick around. We'll be talking a little bit more about where to get your live deal on Wirecast if that's something you are wanting to do. So we'll cover that in just a moment, but that is our first announcement. The second announcement you'll want to know about is Wirecast 9.0.1 was just updated and just released just a few days ago. It's just a small fix to Wirecast 9.0 that allows you to bring in the older documents. There was a couple issues with some 8.3 documents not properly loading, so this little update is a great one if you've got some old documents you're trying to make sure will work. So check that one out and go get it. That's what that update patch or fix was for. All right, finally, Facebook was in the news again. They seem to be in the news all the time, but this time it's actually really positive. Their product manager spoke at Streaming Media East and talked about a few Facebook features you can take advantage of now. So some of them that are there at the moment are things like live cross-posting, which is a way to increase your audience by actually simultaneously posting your live streams, not just as a share, but actually as a actual video feed to other pages at the same time. So the way you do that, and we'll actually maybe do some tutorials or some demos on how to do that later in some upcoming shows or in some special one-off streams. But live cross-posting, they also talked about some of the other features that you can take advantage of on the Facebook platform. But the one I'm really interested in is Facebook Rewind. Live Rewind. This basically is for those of you who are joining a live show like this one a little late and want to catch up on what you missed. Well, they will be rolling this feature out soon, which will allow you guys to come in a little bit later and still catch what you missed. So check that out. We'll definitely announce that as soon as that's live. And of course, as always, there's a lot going on with Facebook and the API these days. So you'll want to check in here. We will be giving you the latest news. For example, they are going to not allow you to stream to groups soon, and personal profiles. A lot of that stuff is changing and is going to have to get rebuilt from the ground up. So if you haven't upgraded or updated to the latest version of Wirecast, that's really your safest bet when it comes to being able to use all those little API tweaks, knobs, and levers in Wirecast that you're used to. Older versions of Wirecast are going to stop working after not too much more time, because Facebook is changing the way they share information through their live APIs. So I'll keep you posted, and again, we'll maybe do some special one-off learning sessions or seminars on the Facebook platform and how it's changing and what's new. So stay tuned for all that. All right, and last but not least, you will definitely want to come and check out any upcoming live shows. We'll be talking about webinars and live shows which are going to be coming. We have a webinar next week. I'll cover this more at the end of the show. So without further ado, I do want to jump in, and Deborah Lee, you did a nice job of putting on the live events QR code, so you can actually just hold up your phone. That'll take you to the live Telestream events page, which will tell you about any upcoming webinars, learning sessions, and things like that if you want to book a spot for those. Okay, we will come back and cover all that, but for now, I think it's time to jump into the main event, how to do amazing live demos. And joining me now, I have Mr. Terry White, who is an incredible evangelist and live software demo. He's been in the business and been working with Adobe for over 20 years. He's an expert in a lot of the Creative Cloud software and is teaching weekly on his live channels, on Facebook, on YouTube, and many more. And he's traveling around the world teaching how to use the Adobe software suite. And he uses Wirecast when he's not in person on stage doing it. So I'd like to bring him on. I wanted to bring him on to talk a little bit more about how to make amazing software demos. A lot of people ask us about that and how they can do better ones. So I figured who better to ask than Mr. Terry White. Terry, are you there?
I'm here. Hey, Andrew.
Hey,
How
Terry.
are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So you are currently joining us live on our Skype TX machine, but you're not actually at home right now. You are in the Bay Area.
I'm actually on the road. I'm not that far from you.
Uh-huh.
You're hours away.
That's true. So not too far from us here in up by the Sacramento area in California. So I feel like you're just right around the corner for us. But and for some reason, Apple's voice recognition software still thinks Terry is the same as Siri. So when I say, hey, Terry, Apple has a ways to go. They still haven't figured that one out yet. Maybe it's my pronunciation. So Terry, tell us a little bit more about, for those of you, our audience who may not be familiar with your work, how did you get into becoming an Adobe Worldwide Evangelist? That sounds like a pretty important job.
That goes way back. Actually, I started with Adobe in 1996 as a market specialist. So that was a technical sales position. I would go into accounts and show them the software that the sales rep was trying to sell them at the time. And then my career progressed on the technical side in sales to management, director, and then I wanted to get back in front of the customers. So I took advantage of a reorg and became a worldwide evangelist and started doing world tours, getting back in front of the customer directly and showing the software. And it was day 2 Periscope that I was actually in the Netherlands at a conference, and Periscope had just come out the day before, or time zones the same day, I don't remember. And I said, you know what? I'm going to walk the show floor with this new app called Periscope. So that's how my live streaming began. And then it just took off from there.
Yeah, so you've been working at Adobe for about as long as Telestream has been in existence. So it's definitely, that's pretty...
And actually,
go ahead.
Actually, my first experience with Telestream is Screenflow.
Yeah.
I used, Screenflow for years of tutorials. So most of the stuff that's not or not a recording of a live stream is actually tutorials I've recorded in Screenflow.
Got it. Got it. So Screenflow is actually an onboarding tool that a lot of people are familiar with, particularly if you're a Mac user. It's one of our most popular apps for Mac, and it has such a crazy, rabid fan base, and particularly in education and doing live software demos and things like that. I really don't think there's a better tool to do that on the Mac. It's a fantastic editor and screen capture tool.
It is.
Are you still using it today?
I am. Oh yeah, to this day, when I'm not doing a live stream and I need to record something, it's Screenflow.
That's awesome. Yeah, Screenflow is I like to say it's like a better version of iMovie. It's like if iMovie did everything you wanted it to do, then Screenflow was kind of like that tool. But it's kind of more. So Terry, I definitely see the progression there. So you had to not only teach Adobe software to your customers and clients and key accounts, but then kind of progressed into now being more of a general purpose teacher. When do you feel like that really, what's the state of that right now? I mean, as far as doing live demos, what do you see your main role is? Are you trying to really just bring people in for the first time to get comfortable with it? Or are you trying to actually be more of an advanced teacher in addition to being a beginner's sort of onboarder?
It's definitely more beginner than it is advanced. So we have, because there are way more people that want to know how to get started than there are that say, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years, show me something new. So it's just because of the sheer volume of people that come into Creative Cloud or are new to our products, I spend the majority of my teaching and streaming and evangelizing for onboarding people that are new.
Wow. Yeah, I think as a software demo and teacher myself, I know it's really hard to straddle both, right? To be both an expert, an advanced teacher, for also somebody who's just helping the beginners just get their feet under them. Do you try to segment your content into different, so it's really clear up front, or do you always try to throw a little bit of everything into all your presentations?
Like a new version introduction, it's usually very segmented into, hey, we're going to learn how to do this specific thing in this live stream or this tutorial.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what specifically now, what products are you most responsible for teaching?
I am most responsible for, on the photography side, Lightroom and Photoshop. On the graphic design side, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Adobe XD, Adobe Dimension, and I think that's it.
Not quite sure.
Of course,
there's so many these days.
So many, right?
Yeah.
I think those. Oh, here, let me look at my dots. Yeah, I think I got them all.
So every time they add a new app, are you of all three evangelists kind of going, you take this one, you take that one, no, you take that one?
Well, no, we all have our disciplines. So I do photography and design. Jason does video and audio, and Paul does usually design and web.
I got it. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you kind of set up, because I think people really want to know. Maybe we can cover the technical side and then come back a little bit and talk about tips for preparation or teaching curriculum and some things you've learned along the way. So starting with just the tech side of things, how do you do live demos using Wirecast and on your machines?
Well, and it's one of those things, just like photography, you're always honing the setup or the environment or the camera or the gear or the whatever to make it that much better the next time. So it started off with me just doing the demo from like my MacBook Pro into, and streaming into another computer. I think it was like an HP laptop at first. And then I wanted to keep, making it better, making it faster, so I'm adding more displays. So that way I can have a separate chat monitor that's right next to my webcam, so I can see the chat and make eye contact when I'm answering the questions. And of course, the desktop sharing component is what made me, a proponent of Wirecast right off the bat, because if you go back to before, like, Facebook was allowing you to stream with third-party encoders, or any of the other ones were doing it. It's literally like in Periscope's days and Facebook's early days. If I wanted to stream something I was doing from my desktop, I would literally have to point my phone at the computer, which wasn't the best, best viewing experience. But now that we can demo directly, it makes it so much easier. So I have, multiple scenes and shots set up, of course, so that I can switch from either a full view like we're seeing now of a headshot to where I'm just a little talking head in the corner and showing, of course, giving the majority of the screen real estate to whatever it is I'm doing on the computer.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. So you started with, pointing your phone at the screen. I've seen other people do that. They'll point a camera at the screen, they'll point, and pretty soon you realize that, if I can just natively capture the screen, that's going to be the best quality, and especially with small widgets or tools you need to grab that you want to show people. That's one thing that I think I've noticed. And then the other thing is still keeping yourself in the frame and throwing yourself in the lower corner. When did you start doing that, making sure you were present with the desktop or the user interface behind you? And then when did you start chroma keying out yourself so you were even less distracting?
Pretty much since day one. I remember when in my early days, actually was streaming before Photoshop and before Facebook and YouTube, it was actually on Twitch. And I remember seeing a guy on Twitch doing a demo, and he was keyed out. And I was like, how do you do that? Mm-hmm. And back then I was using, starting with OBS, and he, showed me where it was in the menu, or someone said where it was in the menu. I found it, said, oh, this is definitely the way to go. Because then, like you said, you can be down in the corner, still making contact, still, talking to people without being a distraction because you're like a square or a rectangle covering part of the interface.
Yeah, and with all your background behind you too.
Right, you can still sometimes get in the way. So what I've done as a tip is if I'm let's say I'm usually on the lower left corner, but if there's something going on like in the interface in that corner, I have a shot that quickly just switches me over to the right side. So that way I can alter, with a keystroke, I can alternate where I'm on the left or the right. That way I'm not always in front of something that's important.
That's a great tip. No, don't just lock yourself to one side of the screen. Move yourself where you need to be relative to what you're teaching. Now, another tip that I kind of did, especially for Mac users, and I haven't figured out a good solution for this on Windows, which maybe you can shed some light on, or maybe some of our users, if you have a suggestion, please type it in on the Facebook chat or on the YouTube channel. So, but one of the things that you can do is, in addition to being able to, key yourself out and move yourself from side to side and shrink yourself so you're not a distraction but you're still connecting, is I actually do a live zoom on the screen. So you know how in the Apple accessibility, I can actually manually zoom in. Rather than having to do that in Wirecast artificially, I can actually have the OS zoom level. So I'll just go into it's so helpful.
Definitely is helpful and fast. Oh, and one of the things I've seen one of my colleagues do is he doesn't chroma key himself out, but what he'll do is simply become part of the interface. So, in most of Adobe apps, we have the panels on one side or the other. Mm-hmm. So he'll just take up a area of the panels that he's not going to use or isn't being used.
Got it.
So, he just basically becomes along the side with all the rest of the panels.
He's modularized himself.
Right.
Yeah. He could change himself. That's a great way to do it.
And that's the cool thing is that Wirecast lets you crop your camera to like a square or something that fits perfectly in a certain spot.
Yeah, kind of like we're doing right now. We're cropping ourselves down and doing that. So talk a little bit. Obviously, this requires some gear, right? You need to have a bit of a setup and a studio. Definitely. So you've actually posted a great post on your blog about your live streaming and live demo setup. So if people are curious kind of how Terry does this, I think I should actually show this on my screen, and then we can talk a little bit about it. But you guys are going to want to go to terrywhite.com, and then just scroll down to his blog post not too long ago, last month, April 2nd, and it is called My Live Streaming Studio Setup. It pretty much explains it all right there in the title. And this is a fantastic blog post. In fact, we have a few shots we can put up on screen, and then I'll come back to this post. So, Deborah, if you can throw up some of the shots. So here we are. Here's Terry at his command center in the captain's chair. And Terry, that's quite a setup there. That's a lot of machines. What are we looking at?
Actually, it's so on the left side, you see Wirecast running. So that's running on a 21-inch iMac. Mm-hmm. Then on the right side is the actual presentation computer. That's the 27-inch 2017 iMac. I'm actually doing some retouching on the center screen, which is a Wacom Cintiq. So that's part of the graphic design space. And then the two displays at the top are connected to just a low-end Windows desktop machine. I think it's an HP. And they basically serve as my comment monitors. So, like Facebook is on one side and YouTube's on the other side, or I can have multiple windows up for the different platforms that I might be streaming to.
Got it. And do you? So let's actually go to the next shot, Deverly, and let's see if we can pull up. I think you have everything labeled here, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
So that's my next question. You have a keyboard and mouse for each computer for the most part?
Yeah, I tried
KVM?
I tried. No, actually, what's the keyboard company? Logitech. Logitech makes a nice keyboard, which actually it's Bluetooth, and it's got like a 1, 2, 3 at the top, so you can switch between 3 different devices or computers. But it's always like I'll hit one of the buttons and whatever that computer is having some kind of wireless interference. So I gave up on that and just went, old school. Just let me use the keyboards for each computer
that they came with. Yeah.
Right.
So you actually use the iPod Touch for your timer there in the corner. I see you've got the 17-inch iMac, the Logitech.
Actually, that should be 21. Yeah,
okay,
there's no 17
21
anymore.
Got it.
Yeah.
Atomic clock keeping you on time. It's important. Get in, get out. Tell me about that lighting flex panel. How cool is that? Is that one of those flexible lighting LED?
Yeah, it's actually Westcott's LED flexible panel. So it's on a rigid frame now, but that panel can actually wrap around things. It's just like a piece of cloth with a million LEDs on it.
Wow, pretty cool. And it never gets hot.
Right, never gets hot. So that's another thing is that this room can get pretty warm in and of itself with all the equipment. So the last thing I need to do is have all the hot lights on me.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what kind of, there's the Wirecast setup on the Mac. And so it looks like just from a shot perspective, you've got the kind of the fourth layer is where most of your primary sources are, your cameras, your screens, and so forth.
So all of those next to the head, like the blue one, all the ones to the right are just different angles of really my little talking head. So like the one immediately to the left or to the right of it is me on the lower left.
Yeah.
Then there's one with me on the lower left next to that with what I call the hand cam. So you can see me actually doing whatever it is I'm doing on the Cintiq with the pen. And then I've got one next to that actually pivots. Because this is a technique I use in Screenflow all the time, where it pivots the
angles in
the computer angles in right while I'm talking or explaining something, which makes my headshot just a little bit bigger because I'm explaining something and talking and not demoing. And then the one to the right of that is me on the right side. So
you use the angle in to kind of emphasize a period of break, but not totally leave to the full screen shot where you want to get out of the interface because you're maybe emphasizing something, but you're not needing to demo.
Yeah, usually that's because I'm going to say something quick, so I don't want to completely leave the interface, but that's what that's for.
Got it.
And then the one on the right of that is just a closing screen, so it's got like a video running in the background.
Wow. Have you rigged any hotkeys for these quick changeovers? Or
I use a Bluetooth numeric keypad just to be able to switch between all of those different sources.
I think I saw that. Deborah, let's go back one to the labeled shot where everything has a label. And then we can actually see, I think you had right there, the Bluetooth keypad for switching. Cool.
So that's literally sitting on top of the HP keyboard's numeric pad because I'm not using that one. And I'm using that for, actually, that's my switcher.
Punch it up.
So I don't have to lean over. I don't have to, turn my head. I can just put my hand down there where my hand is anyway. And hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to switch to the different scenes.
Awesome. And
different shots.
You've got one. Sorry. Just to clarify here, you have Wirecast set up in auto live mode.
Correct.
Okay. So that way, whatever you touch will just automatically transition to be the shot.
Correct.
Do you like to use cuts or do you like to use fades? I mean, is there a transition you prefer?
I tried the different transitions and I just came back to cut. It's just because it's quicker. There's,
cut one, cut two.
It's just smooth. It's just done.
Got it. Got it. So I think that's a really fantastic piece of advice, is have a close, have it in auto live mode so you can just punch a button, 1, 2, 3, 4, have your shots ready, and then you can do that. Now, when you want to bring on titles and graphics, is that when you start using a mouse to bring those on? Do you even have those hotkey?
Usually. No, yeah, that starts to get a little complicated. So usually that's going to be me just clicking on the various titles.
Got it. Got it.
I've also experimented with switching, like on an app on the iPad. I noticed you guys have support for a new keyboard, so that's intriguing. So they're still, honing in, switching from different sources, since I'm the operator and the presenter at the same time.
Yeah.
If you have the luxury of having a second person to help you and be the operator, then that makes it so much easier, because that person can bring on those live titles and emphasize things that, switch you if they see you talking. They can switch to that shot.
You see it happening right now. Deverly's the wizard behind the scenes. Now, the one thing we don't have, we won't maybe do some sort of a hybrid where if I, because I'll know kind of ahead of time maybe if I want to pull something up quickly. So maybe having that Bluetooth option available, just if I need to punch something up real fast, just for pictures, so we kind of pre-agree on that. That might be a good hybrid option, because otherwise my one thing is to kind of be like, hey, can we pull that up, please? So Terry, talk about internet and connectivity. What kind of internet connection are you really pulling at that studio?
I have a great connection now. I didn't have one all along, but the first year I moved in my house, we were on a very, very, very slow connection. So now I have Xfinity, which is 300 megabit down and 30 or 25 up.
Pretty darn good.
So yeah, not complaining there. It's certainly been enough to do everything I needed to do.
Awesome. So now let's talk about some of the other strengths and advantages that this setup allows you to do. Now, recently, you guys did your first sort of joint, like 3 evangelist simultaneous demo, but you guys weren't even sitting in the same place. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of my favorite features that you guys brought out in Wirecast 8 was a feature called Rendezvous. And Rendezvous basically allows you to bring in multiple people onto your stream. So I had done it a couple times just with people that were, talking. They were like we're doing now. I'm not really presenting anything. We're just talking and having a chat, and that worked great. Then the next one I tried was the person was actually going to do a demo, and that worked great. She shared her screen, and that worked out fantastically. So then I said, well, hey, when we were on the road a lot, the 3 of us would be on stage. Even though only one person's presenting at a time, we'd all stay on stage for pretty much the whole day. And we would just take turns presenting and tossing files back and forth over the network and so forth and so on. So we always talked about, hey, with Creative Cloud, you can share a file in a library and the other person in another state or whatever can start working with that file. Well, this time we actually did it, because the 3 of us were on stage virtually. I was in Atlanta in my home office. Jason was in Arizona in his own home office, and Paul was here in San Francisco working from the Adobe offices. And we were streaming together, each presenting a full, kind of workflow from the Adobe Creative Cloud perspective. So I started off with the photography and a little bit of compositing. Jason took over and did some video and audio, and then Paul did some more graphic design and UI UX design. So the stuff that I had worked on from the photography standpoint synced up with a Creative Cloud library, and then Paul and Jason were able to pick those assets up and keep using them.
Got it.
And it all worked great.
I think we have a clip here. Actually, I'm playing it on my desktop right now. If you guys go to YouTube and search for The Wizards of Workflow, which is a great title, design, photography, and video, you can see here's the YouTube video that they posted. And Terry, this looks amazing. So it looks like you've got, all them coming in on their different rendezvous shots. You've got
Yep.
their titles and how people can reach out to them. And I'm assuming Jason Levine here is the guy they call Adobe Jesus, right?
That's Jason.
And then Paul. So you guys could in addition to being able to all call in and talk in this kind of panel discussion format using Rendezvous, you were then able to hand off actual workflow screens. Now,
Yes.
so you started off and then handed it over.
So now you're on Jason.
Now I'm
Yep.
on Jason. Now the only thing is, you guys were asking if you could bring yourselves in, kind of just like you did locally, and superimpose yourself, so we could see that it would be Jason on screen. Now through Rendezvous right now, screen share is just the only built-in option through Chrome or through the browser you're using. But we talked about maybe some ways you guys could actually bring in your video on top.
Yeah, and I told the guys about that. We can't wait to try it next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna do some testing with that, and if that works, our next one will be even better.
That's amazing. So you guys are seeing this happen as they're figuring it out, but this is so cool that you guys are doing that and sharing it from one end of the workflow chain to the other, and all being able to get on the same call. Are you guys all? So you're in Atlanta, is that correct?
Correct.
And then where are the other guys located?
Jason's in Arizona, and Paul's in I keep wanting to say Utah. He's in Colorado.
All right. So the trick here is just making sure everyone's coordinated, showing up at the same time, and the right time zone, stuff like that.
We always, since the company's based in California, we just always now use Pacific time whenever we're planning anything.
Mm-hmm.
Then everyone kind of knows to do their own conversion.
Got it. Yeah, you add 3 minus, add 2,
right.
add 1.
Yeah, whatever works for you where you are.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because Arizona doesn't recognize daylight savings time, so that's always a challenge.
Yes.
So, hey, 1 p.m. Pacific time, you figure it out.
You're responsible for your own atomic clock.
Right.
Yeah. So Rendezvous, I think I can't wait to see the next one. I think that's a really fantastic workflow example. How do you guys sort of coordinate the assets and the passing of files from one? I mean, talk a little bit about, I think now we can get a little bit into the content creation side and the planning of a good live demo. What do you guys do to plan a great live demo ahead of time? How much planning does that take?
Well, so a couple things. Number one, I've learned that for people to get your audience and to have people there that want to watch it in the first place, you got not only have to have a good topic, you have to explain it or have a good title for your topic in a way that that will intrigue them or bring them in. So for example, let's say I wanted to show how to remove a person from a background and put them on a different background. Well, that feature in Photoshop is called maybe content-aware fill or select subject or refine edge or all of the various technical things that's called. If I said how to use select and mask, no one knows what that is. No one, so you're not going to get people to come and say that.
Right.
If I said how to remove your X from the photo or how to bring in, replace the background with a better background or whatever.
Taking
whatever,
red eye out, yeah.
Right. Those are terms that people understand. So you always start with whatever the topic is going to be, but then changing the wording to where it's going to have the most appeal to people that may not know what the feature is called. So therefore, they're not going to be interested. Next, it then becomes an issue of building the assets that will work. So since my case is mostly photography, finding the right pictures that will show off whatever it is I'm trying to show. And if I'm doing graphic design, finding a good layout or a good layout example that I'm going to recreate. I'm designing a logo or how to draw something, which I don't draw, but if I were doing that, then of course it would take a lot of practice to make sure it's going to work right when I do it. So those are all the kind of tips I would say. Don't go in cold. Don't go in, hey, I've done this a million times. Let me do it again live, because that's usually when something will go wrong.
Right.
Practice. Make sure all your files are where you need them to be so you can get to them quickly. Because when you're recording the tutorial, you can always edit that stuff out while you're looking for something. But when you're live, you're literally making people wait while you figure it out.
Right, right.
So just preparing and having good visual examples, and of course a good intriguing topic that will bring people in.
How do you so if with time always being a little bit of a premium, and I'm sure there's a million other things you always have to be kind of thinking about and doing the rest of the time, how do you do you set aside time to practice certain demos before you go live multiple times? Do you have a minimum, like I always go through a demo at least twice? Obviously the first time you do a demo kind of in entirety, and it must be difficult, especially when it's complex like the one you did with both Jason and Paul, to not only practice it well, and then keep your time, watching your time and making sure that just the most relevant chunks get shown, and you're clicking through things and getting through it quickly. So how do you kind of balance that, the prep versus
all of the above.
on-screen?
So we start with how much time we're going to give ourselves or give each person. So typically my Facebook lives we try to make them no more than 20 minutes. They tend to sometimes go to 30 minutes, but that's just an ongoing battle to try and,
pull it back,
bring the time back down, pull it back. So first, set a limit. Set how long you want this to take. If it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the demo is, and then practice it to where it fits in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it too, is are you showing something that is worth the time to show? In other words, if I'm going to do part of the demo is going to take a minute to do it, was that minute worth it?
Right.
Versus having the pre-cooked version of it so that it's ready to just pull that file up and show it. Do people really need to see the sausage being made or the hamburgers being made? Whatever
all the tiny little adjustments.
Right,
or
all the tiny little adjustments.
The render bars.
Worth it?
Right.
Right. Yeah, render bars. So that's a great example. I remember when I did a video on how to use Premiere Pro. I wanted that video to be shorter than it was, but what I realized is to spend the first half of the video showing them how it's done, and then opening a project that was almost done and finishing it versus the time it would take to get to the one that's done.
Right.
If you were doing it all from scratch.
Yeah. I found that too. What I almost do is when I have time and when I get the kind of dedicated space to do it, what I'll do is I'll go through the whole thing, build the project, and then I'll just save snapshots along the way. And then out of my snapshots of the project, I'll kind of jump back and pick 2 or 3, if it's a complicated project, and kind of jump ahead. First, I'll show the finished. So here's where we're going. Then I'll come back and go, here's where we started from scratch, and I added 2 things. Now let's jump ahead. I kind of, if you wash, rinse, repeat, you'll get here. And then that's kind of your mid-stage project, and then finally jump to maybe the 90% complete, and then just wrap it up.
That's what I mean. So when it's rinse and repeat, do people really need to see you do the same thing 5 times in a row? Mm-hmm. No, they need to see you do it once, maybe twice, and then jump to the one that you had to do 10 of them. It's already done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So so with this Wizards of Workflow and Design, which is still running on my screen here, talk a little bit about compelling projects that you guys are picking from running from one end of your expertise to the other and out the other end.
Well, yeah, the reason that one was actually easier than usual to make and work is because we had all been in South Africa together at that game preserve. Mm-hmm. So the content that we were showing in this was actually from, 6-7 years ago, that when we were there. Mm-hmm. We still had all our files, of course. I still have all my photos. Jason still had all his videos. Paul still had some of the graphic design. Some of it he did from scratch. So a lot of it was because we had all been on this trip together. It was an easy one to start with and test because we all had assets, and that way the theme would be consistent across all 3 of us because we're all working on the files from the same location.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's cool. And so I imagine you have some more ambitious plans for ones coming up where you're doing handoffs and things like that. More real time. So are you guys going to try to stick to a cadence for these and start doing one every month or so?
Well, yeah. Well, we were thinking once a month.
Okay, cool. Well, and will you be broadcasting that on the Adobe Creative Cloud channel primarily, or will you also be sharing it on individual channels? Okay.
Primarily on the Creative Cloud YouTube, and probably we'll experiment with the Creative Cloud Facebook as well.
Okay.
and maybe even simulcast it, since that's another reason why I use Wirecast.
Simulcasting is pretty great. So lots more where that's coming from. Now, if you guys have some questions for Terry or about anything that we talked about, sort of sparked something for you, please shout them out and let us know. And I definitely am curious on if you have any preference as far as how Wirecast is helping you to enable live software demos, if there's sort of auto sensing, or if there's any other features that you are finding that would be great for demo artists, please enter those into the chat. Or Terry, if you have some additional thoughts. Like, I thought your rendezvous screen sharing and compositing idea was a fantastic one, and other things I'll pass on to the product team.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that, I think we should probably mention, we did talk about it at the beginning, we actually have a little bit of a thank you offer for our audience. So why don't we we jumped into our conversation and kind of got rolling, so I didn't want to break it up. But if you want to, if you're interested, we actually, in honor of Terry coming on the show, we thought we'd give anyone who's watching for the next week a 10% off coupon from our live deals page, a 10% off Wirecast if you are buying it. This should not work for upgrades. It should just be for a new purchase of Wirecast, or somebody who's interested in getting the software to help them with their demos or do stuff on their Mac or Windows computer. And so where do they head to get that, Terry? Do you remember?
I remember. I think it was telestream.net/Terry White.
Telestream.net/Terry White. So that'll be good for another week. There's a coupon there. And Deborah Lee's telling me she may not be able to put that on. But I'll put a link in the chat, and maybe you can put a link in the show notes when we give you the MP4 or something like that.
Definitely.
And but either way, it should be pretty easy to remember. Telestream.net/Terry White. And so, Terry, anything else that you sort of think that makes a great live demo? We talked about sort of having good. Oh, there it goes.
There it is.
All right.
I saw this animated title when it was being created.
Yeah. Definitely good job on that. So it's good through next week, May 16th. And so, Terry, anything else that people should be thinking of when prepping or wanting to create live software demos? We talked about sort of the technology. I think one of the things that's really apparent from your studio is you really split the responsibilities for the processing across multiple machines. Like, it really seems like that's a very good way to compartmentalize any point of failure and not ask one computer to do too much, like run complex video processing.
It's hard enough for the computer to keep the stream going at a real time HD quality. So the last thing you want to do is pile on top of that computer, memory hungry or heavy applications that you're going to be doing the demo on, because at the end of the day, you're trying to do it all on one computer, everything's going to suffer. So the stream quality won't be as good. The software will take longer to process, and you'll see more render bars or things like that. So definitely dividing up at least two computers, one for the presentation and one for everything else. Wirecast and maybe the chat. But so like I said, I had a older computer just sitting around, so it became the chat computer, and
should be able to handle that.
Nothing is I could definitely handle text.
And obviously to get the chat, you're typically pulling up the preview of the stream or the actual channel page, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I'm pulling up the Facebook page that it's streaming on, or the YouTube event where it's showing me the chat window. In my hub for everything, you can get to the links for all the. Oh, there's feedback.
You're back.
You can get links to the various channels I'm streaming on. Plus, every Monday I try and do a blog post about what I'm going to be doing live that week, whether it's in person or a live stream.
And you do that at terrywhite.com.
I do that at terrywhite.com.
Awesome.
Of course, my YouTube channel, which is terrywhite.tv, and the various Adobe, product pages on Facebook, and youtube.com/Adobe Creative Cloud.
Awesome. Terry, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Don't forget, you guys have 1 week or a little bit less than a week to go get 10% off at telestream.net/Terry. Thanks in honor to our guest this week for doing that. And Terry, any last things you'd like to share before we sign off today?
No, keep streaming.
And that, folks, was the incomparable Terry White. You can check him out at his YouTube channels for his weekly live demos, or go to terrywhite.com for all the latest Terry White information. Thanks again to Terry for being on the show. That wraps up another episode of Wirecast Live. If you want to get more of this awesome show, you can find us here live every Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific or California time. And you can follow us or get notified on these social media channels. I'd also like to thank our technology partners for the show that help make this show possible. They are critically important to our studio workflow, and we use all of their equipment in the making of this episode every week. Finally, next week we have Owen Video coming on the show to talk about how to grow your Facebook audience. Owen is a broadcaster and a social media personality and an all-around great guy who knows a lot about how to grow your Facebook audience. I'm looking forward to that conversation. We will be back here next week, same time, with Owen to talk about that. I look forward to it, and I hope to see you guys there. This has been another episode of Wirecast Live.